It is 12:59. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. The 2022 NFL Scouting Combine rolls on in Indianapolis as offensive linemen and running backs are in action today, getting work in at Lucas Oil Stadium. The SEC Women's Basketball Tournament quarterfinals start today at Bridgestone Arena. Currently halftime between Arkansas and number 1 South Carolina, and South Carolina leads at 40-29. Coming up, Florida and Ole Miss will go head-to-head at 2:30 after the Florida Gators knocked off Vanderbilt yesterday. Kentucky taking on 8th-ranked LSU at 6, and the number 18 Tennessee Lady Vols facing Alabama at 8:30 for a spot in the semifinal. You can hear all the action on 1045thezone.com or the 1045 The Zone app, courtesy of Learfield. The Belmont Bruins begin their OVC tournament slate in the semifinals today with the season on the line, taking on Morehead State. Tip-off at 9:30. A lot of moving parts in the SEC men's basketball slate on Saturday. Number 13 Tennessee hosting number 14 Arkansas as the Vols look to stay unbeaten at Thompson Bowling this season. A Tennessee win and an Auburn upset loss to South Carolina at home would give the Vols a share of the SEC regular season title. Tip-off at 11 a.m. Hear the Vol Network call right here on The Zone. Vanderbilt will fight back to get to 500 on Saturday. The Commodores taking on Ole Miss in Oxford, a 5 p.m. tip-off. College baseball, Tennessee is in Houston for the Shriners Hospital for Children College Classic, playing the top-ranked Texas Longhorns at Minute Maid Park tonight. First pitch is at 7 p.m. The Vols will face Baylor Saturday and Oklahoma on Sunday. Meanwhile, the Vandy boys in Hawaii for a 4-game series. Game 1 is tonight, a 10:35 first pitch. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 1045 The Zone.
Three, two, you're up. That's what Lucas Panzica says, so it's go time here. What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday, man. It looks good outside today, so I hope you got some fun plans. I hope they include listening to Blaine and Mickey. We got a special guest today, Alex Apple, hanging out with his counterfeit Grizzlies jersey that you just told us. So if you're on Zone TV, you can
never know it was counterfeit if I hadn't told
you can see this glorious rascal that he's wearing here if you're on Zone TV.
We got the John Morant jersey, the alternate. Just picked that up from China.
You're young, so you don't remember this, but you would know these jerseys, the cartoonish jerseys that teams wore.
Yeah.
Like the cartoon grizzly bear or the cartoon dinosaur. Do you like that era of stuff?
Well, the Grizzlies are wearing that again.
Oh, I know.
Like the light green that they wore in Vancouver.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it. The 1996 NBA All-Star Game was the worst jersey of all time. You're not driving right now, Google that. 1996 NBA All-Star jersey. I mean, it literally looked like an amateur cartoonist. You ever seen these, Mickey?
I'm sure I saw it. I mean, I would, but
I mean, it looks like, you know what it looks like is clip art.
This is just a heck of a thing that you just pulled out of your fanny here.
Let's just start the show with this. Yeah, we're going to start with jersey talk.
That is the 96 All-Star jersey.
You'll remember it as soon as you see it.
1996 All-Star jersey.
It's got like an arm holding a basketball. It's light blue.
Mother of pearl. Oh, my gosh. The arm looks like a chili pepper or a
But
boot.
if you have one of these now, it's a real, like, collector's item. Like, you can there's obviously a limited number of these still being manufactured for obvious reasons. I'm looking at a $350 Mitchell & Ness version for sale by Dick's now.
I'm seeing the same thing. Hibbett Sports $350. There's I guess the white version, the home version is just as atrocious. Here's a Gary Payton of that. These are horrific.
I'm going to make an NFT out of it and sell it for $40,000. Call it my first piece of artwork.
It's a piece of something, that's for sure. Alex Apple hanging out for the Hitman today. The Combine continues. Really the biggest news out of the Combine, there are two things that have come out of the Combine. One was Matt Miller, who's at NFL Draft Scout, essentially saying he's been asked more about Mitchell Trubisky than any quarterback at the draft. That one stuck out to me. Lucas, did you see that?
No. A lot of Mitchell Trubisky talk lately.
Mitch Trubisky. That's quarterback world, though. That's the quarterback world, is like one man's trash is another man's treasure. He's suddenly the hottest thing on the market, more so than any of the guys. And Matt Miller is his trade is scout guys, give the information on guys. And people are like, hey, what do you remember about Mitch Trubisky?
Well, I think that the fantasized big veteran quarterback movement offseason that we thought there was going to be, where Aaron Rodgers is going to move, don't think
Zero.
that. Russell Wilson, he ain't going anywhere. Jimmy Garoppolo probably can't even be traded. Who else was out there? I'm probably forgetting one or two.
Jameis Winston.
So you got, Jameis and Mitch Trubisky, maybe Mariota. That's how quickly that gets thin.
No, that's the big three. Blaine and me talked about this the other day.
Who would you rather have out of those three? I know my answer. I'd go Jameis. His arm talent is better than the other. If you can rein him in any capacity, he's going to lose you one or two a year.
There's no reining in Jameis Winston.
Have you seen his latest workout videos where he's running in a bubble on a treadmill?
Yeah, or sitting on the ball, the exercise ball, having somebody try to knock the ball out of his hands.
Do you think he dreams this stuff up?
The point is, I don't want any of those three.
So
they
the
all
answer
stink.
is D, none of the above.
D, please draft someone.
Think about this. Again, this is a topic that Blaine and I brought up the other day. And I said, man, I just started making some quarterback notes. He's like, okay. I said, so like Brian Gutekunst just saying he never promised Aaron Rodgers that he would trade him. Then the Packers brass said at the combine this week, no one even called about him. That's horse manure. Somebody called about him. Maybe he just didn't take.
Maybe they didn't have a formal offer.
Right. And so that's how he can say, plausible deniability. Doesn't look like Russell Wilson's going to get out of Seattle. So it's exactly like you said. Okay, then what are you going to do? Because these teams, I wrote down free agents: Trubisky, Jameis, Mariota, Bridgewater, or Tyrod Taylor. That's kind of who that group is. That's the free agent group. Who needs a quarterback? So think about this. Buccaneers.
Okay.
Broncos, that's no mystery.
Okay. They'll continue to need a quarterback.
The Steelers.
They can't find one.
You could go to a great team and be the quarterback of the Steelers. Yeah. The Saints, I know they have salary cap issues. They're still a good team. Heck, they almost made it with like 4 different guys playing quarterback.
And I bet Jameis goes back there.
That makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Because they stayed in-house with who?
Right, head coach, the defensive coordinator.
Is it Bruce Allen?
Bruce Allen, right.
So they stayed in-house. They're trying to stay the same as much as they can. Well, that would be staying the same as if you're like, just come on back and start practicing. Let's just get
and
this
the rest
thing
of their roster is good enough. I mean, well, they're kind of like Tampa Bay. I mean, the rest of that roster is almost good enough to win a Super Bowl.
If you were a free agent, would you not if you're Jimmy Garoppolo, would you not say, call the Bucs, call the Steelers, call the Saints?
I don't even think he can be traded. Right? But, because if you're the Bucs, you're getting a hurt guy who's pretty good, mediocre. I don't know what the Bucs front office would describe Jimmy Garoppolo.
But do you like him though better than the other cats that are available?
Or do you just draft whoever is available to you in the draft?
So here it is: Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Matt Corral. That's the big three.
I bet there's 4 that go in the first round. There always is.
Yeah.
You just can't pass up quarterback needs. If you take Ryan Tannehill off the Titans, they're not going anywhere until they get a quarterback that's at least as good as him. So what would you be forced to do in the draft? You would have to find somebody.
Don't the Steelers just have to? Because there's all this story about they're infatuated with Malik Willis. They're going to get Malik Willis. That's who they want. So how do you make sure that you get him at 20? Because everybody's loving his arm strength, and he had great meetings and all this stuff. So the Steelers going to have to trade up? Are they going to have to?
It happens every year. Yeah. You certainly would assume that. Because you're going to be sitting there at 8, 9, 10, and there's going to be one guy gone. Maybe all of a sudden there's already 2. And then everybody who needs a quarterback starts getting that tight booty and calling every team that's about to be on the clock. Happens every year. I would bet a mortgage on that would be 15, top 15. There's going to be 3 of them gone.
The wildest of wild cards in all of this. So this is who I'm just writing this down. Needs a starting quarterback: Bucks, Broncos, Steelers, Saints, Washington, and then the Panthers. The top
Giants.
Draft picks available.
Well, I guess they'll keep Danny Dimes.
They're going to keep Danny Dimes for now. So here's the other 3 scenarios. We mentioned Jimmy G and the 49ers. They literally have a first-round draft pick just sitting there waiting for Jimmy G to shove off. The Vikings and Kirk Cousins. Is he available? And the other one, the Colts and Carson Wentz. What happens there? Because Jim Irsay essentially leaked it out. There's no way he's going to be around here. Because all the Colts beat writers are like, Wentz won't be there next year. It's not going to work out. And even at the combine this week, when Chris Ballard spoke about it, he said nothing kind or even remotely, I felt like that connected him to Carson Wentz.
Well, and let's connect this to the Titans. So I think there's a school of thought that the Titans trade back, get maybe a second round pick or an extra in the third, right? Because really they need depth. They have a couple of holes. So it's really a game theory approach if you're John Robinson. If there is a game-changing wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, somebody else you really like, maybe Trey McBride, the tight end from Colorado State, sitting there at 26, does that one selection make you better than two would? And I connect it to this because the ideal scenario would be the quarterbacks don't go as early as I'm betting. And then all of a sudden at 26, the Titans are in a great spot because every team at the bottom of the draft stinks and presumptively needs a quarterback, right? May even have one that you think is good, but they might do a Josh Rosen, Kyler Murray thing and say, I'm not convinced. Let's get us another one. And so then when you're at 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, everybody starts to call you because the assumption is that one or two of those guys is definitely going to go at the start of day 2, at the start of the second round. Mm-hmm. And if those guys are sitting there, you need to make your move on night 1. That opens up so many options for John Robinson to trade back if he makes the decision that there is no game changer here for our offense, which is where you're at with the Titans, right? Most of the roster is pretty good. You need a game changer or you need multiple holes plugged. Why would you plug just, what would you really take just, a guard? Would you just take Lindblom from Iowa and plug that hole in? Maybe.
I don't think he's.
But I doubt they would.
Yeah, and he's the center out of Iowa who's apparently you can just plug him in and he can play. I've seen him mocked to the Titans and Tyler Linderbaum in a handful of drafts. Would you take a center in the first round, though? He's the best one. So do you take him in the first round? So Titans pick at 26. The Bucks pick at 27. What if Matt Corral's there at 26 and the Bucks need a quarterback? I started looking at this.
Yeah.
So
that's another great point. The Titans are in a great position to potentially move.
The Bucks pick at 27. They're the rare, late drafting team who, oh, by the way, we don't have a quarterback
at
anymore.
All.
So the Packers pick at 28. They've got Jordan Love, and I feel like Poop Cleanser is going to be there, Mr. Panchakarma. The Dolphins pick at 29. What if Matt Corral's there and Mike McDaniel's
new regime?
New regime. I really liked him. I'm just saying that could happen. They've got Tua, but he's not really entrenched. Chiefs aren't taking anybody. The Bengals aren't taking anybody. The wildest of cards in this to me is the Lions at 32. They have the 32nd pick because of the Rams.
Right.
What if Matt Corral's there? Because Matt Corral just seems to keep being there. He seems to be the one guy that seems to be.
Or Sam Howell, maybe from North Carolina.
Thurston Howell.
Pro game. Is that his middle name?
No, that's a guy from Gilligan's Island.
I know who Thurston Howell is. That's probably going to be so surprised.
So, what if the Lions figure we need to get in front of the Buccaneers? Well, there's your window.
There you go.
So, I did some digging, and I want to say it was 2018, 2019, the Patriots traded, I think, 23 for a second and a third. So a second and a third seems like probably the best you could get.
Well, and I think also we're sleeping as just a collective community. We're talking a ton about wide receivers, and there's nothing I hate more than talking about a wide receiver's 40 in the combine. Give me a guy that can separate at the top of his route all day. We make way too much of that. But the biggest position to me that the Titans have to find a difference maker at, that they had a net 0 at last year, tight end. So let's say you love Trey McBride from Colorado State, who I think is everybody's top tight end, and he's a pretty good blocker, so he would fit what the Titans like to do. You've got to block. Do you take him at 26? You might be able to get him at 36. Now, he also might be gone. He might end up going top 15. I don't know.
I think that happened to them last year. I think every time they had a tight end they wanted, he got picked right. But that had to because they needed to draft a tight end last year, and they just kept not getting the opportunity.
Well, like when the Patriots selected Rob Gronkowski, that was in the second round. They traded back. They took Aaron Hernandez in the same draft, I believe. Second round's kind of right for that because a tight end so rarely comes in. I mean, let's say you draft the number 1 tight end in the league next year.
I looked. There were 2
tight
tight ends.
Catch 40 balls?
There were 2 tight ends. I remember this. I've been looking up so many things. There are only 2 tight ends last year who had more than 20 catches. It was Freiermuth and then the freak with the Falcons.
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the best 2 of all time are Jeremy Shockey and Mike Ditka are the 2 tight ends that caught the most of all passes in their rookie season. Kyle Pitts, the best prospect in, a decade at tight end? I mean, let's take a good example. Hawkinson for the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
He top 12, no doubt, first-round draft pick. he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big upgrade for what the Titans have,
Right.
but does he make a difference? So, I mean, if that's what you're looking at, maybe you trade back for that. I mean, maybe they see one of these receivers and have to have it. But I think it's a volume play, too, for the Titans. Is Julio going to be involved? They'll hopefully know an answer to that. It's going to be a yes or a no by the time they get to the draft. They may not have made that decision. I think he's going to have to be cut until, I think it's June or July or something like
It'd
that.
be June after
to save
June
the
1st.
money.
Yeah, that way all the cap hit doesn't hit this year. It gets spread out.
You're looking. Maybe you keep Marcus Johnson around. He seemed to be pretty good when
healthy.
I mean, he was such a cup of tea. Small sample size. You need like 3 receivers. So just spending one in the first round. If you get Julio, you're in the same position. You have 2.
If they get Chris Olave, though, who ran fast and is doing everything
Great route
amazingly, he was getting mocked some to the Titans, but I don't know if he makes it that far. We made it to the first segment. Alex Apple hanging for the Hitman. Here's what we got next. Buck Reising is still live in Indy. Let's get some real perspective on this with boots on the ground. Mr. Buck Reising, we'll do that next on Blaine and Mickey. Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone. Alex Apple hanging out today for the Hitman. Always good to catch up with him. Always good to catch up with this guy. Buck Reising joins us now. He's in Indy, brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, home of the non-commissioned salespeople. Buck, how in the world are things going in Indy? Are you still sitting right next to the bench press area?
No, I'm slumped in my hotel room because I'm exhausted, and this place is slowly sucking the life out of me. But it's lovely to have it back in our lives. It's been a while since I've been combine. Well, not an actual hangover, but combine hangovers are a real enough thing based on sleep deprivation and all the other nonsense that we're doing. But it's a great time. I'm happy to be back.
What have you heard more? Well, and include today, because I know today has been different. Have you heard the phrase hand size or the name Amari Cooper more? Which one of those two things?
Mercifully, I avoided all of the Amari Cooper stupidity today. So hand size, probably the buzzword that's going to trigger me the most. Fortunately, though, if you were to do that to me on social media, I just don't have the energy to fight with people anymore. So,
Sure.
Now is the time to kick me while I'm down.
You're right for the picking.
Yeah, you heard it, folks. He's depleted his energy, so feel free to attack Buck Reising in person or via social media. Actually, don't do it in person. He's in Indy. You'd probably get in some trouble up there. So before I hand this over to Alex, I wanted to ask you this. We heard from Vrabel. We heard from J-Rob. They did the national thing at the podium. Then they did the breakout with the local guys. What did you learn from either or both of those guys with all the stuff that they said?
I thought the Vrabel stuff on Tim Kelly not having an agenda was interesting because obviously, they tried to hire him for Todd Downing's job the first time around, and they were summarily denied the opportunity to do so while he was still on the Houston Texans staff. And really, he kind of – and I don't know if he was just doing this to move on from the question or if he was serious about the idea that they are – it's not really that much of an involved title based on based on Jim Schwartz, who is a senior defensive assistant, which is typically not that involved of a role. Passing game coordinator is much, much different. That's very much an involved position, scheming and game planning, all of these things. And I thought the way that Vrabel kind of conflated that was odd, for lack of a better term, maybe not intentionally, but I try not to read too much into these things, but of course that's obviously what I have to spend 75 hours a day live on air doing.
Sure.
With Robinson, everybody made such a big deal about him getting emotional, and that's what grabbed the most attention out of it. And I just thought that was such a not, I don't want to say meaningless. All right. That's not fair, but of all the things that he said, I found that to be the least compelling, or all the things that he did up here, I found that to be the least compelling of all of it, because he said actually a lot of stuff about, quarterbacks on the table as far as the draft is concerned. They want Harold Landry back, but they have a price point that they have to be respectful of. With me, he basically did a cost-benefit analysis of Harold with me, saying that, we'd love to have our best players back, but everybody has a certain point, and Harold helps the defense, but the defense also does a lot to help Harold. So there's a lot of stuff from John that didn't get nearly as much attention. But, when football people cry, we got to freak out about it.
That's true. We always freak out when we have Buck Reising on, but he's on with us right now.
But good to talk with you this week. Anybody, just whether it's from other folks in the media, league execs, catch your attention this week, a guy working out that you didn't know about or didn't know too much about going into this week that kind of caught your eye and thought, that's a guy to sort of monitor moving forward?
That's a good question. The answer is probably a lot of them. There's so many. I mean, there's north of 320 some odd players here. And I wish I had a more specific example to give you. I spent a lot of time with Perion Winfrey today, the interior defensive lineman from Oklahoma, who I think is a very, very attractive prospect for a lot of reasons. I don't imagine he's somebody who the Titans would be invested in, but just kind of, speaking with him today, I didn't have a ton of time between the media interviews, and I wrote an article about Matthew Butler and Harold Landry's relationship before I did the radio show today, so I haven't had a ton of time to go back and watch his games, but seeing what scouts are, basically asking and texting scouts about him. He's somebody who's being very well received. That's probably a name that most people have heard, but I hadn't quite made it to the interior defensive line portion of my studies yet. So to have the opportunity to learn about some new guys is a very valuable part of this process, at least for me.
It took me about all of 24 hours to get tired of hearing about guys 40 times. I mean, it was fun to watch it, sure. Mickey tweeted out a graphic earlier this week about the fastest times ever at the Combine, and the one thing that all those guys had in common, they all stunk, other than Chris Johnson. When you look at a receiver, what's most important to you? Is it separation at the top of his route, ability to run a good route tree, right, which not every college guy can do? Velus Jones kind of had everything schemed up for him at Tennessee. Right? Or is it speed? I mean, what do you look at for that? I mean, I just think when you look at the list of the fastest guys and how often they've not been any good, we should stop talking about that so much.
Well, yeah, but it's a television product, so that's it's. And I don't mean to say this to be dismissive of people who watch this stuff, but it's lowest common denominator stuff, right? Big, tall, strong man runs really fast. Let's put it on television and let's all tweet about how big, strong, and fast he was throughout the course of this. I mean, it seems like such a general answer, but truly consistency at that position is so critical to me. Now, that can mean anything from footwork to how you handle your route craft to your just general ability to play in and play out, catch the football. How do you catch the football? Are you comfortable and confident enough in your hands to reach out and grab it out of the air when a quarterback is ripping it at your face mask at 100 miles an hour, or are you somebody who is not like that and your body catching the ball? The consistency is such a broad and general term, so I hope that's not a cop-out. But I'm glad you brought up the idea of, fast guys not necessarily being the best NFL players. Dane Brugler put this out this morning. Basically easy to get excited about their 40 times at that position, but the top 10 from 3 years ago when we actually had a real combine, you had two studs in Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf. You had two decent depth wide receivers in Mecole Hardman and Darius Slayton, and the rest are just terrible. Two are straight up out of the league, and four of those guys are wild disappointments. And guys like Andy Isabella and who else? You got Johnny Dixon, Brandon Boykin. There's so many of these dudes. Paris Campbell. It just it doesn't mean anything to me, other than separation can come in all manner of different forms. But straight line speed, while it doesn't matter that they are fast at that position, it's such a minuscule part of the evaluation of that position in particular.
Buck Reising, our guest here, hanging out with Alex Apple and me. He's live in Indy, though, and we are back in the studio. So we're talking about receivers. Julio Jones' name came up this week. Did you leave there feeling any stronger one way or the other about his future?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, it could change, right? Anything could change at any given point. But I don't think there's been much movement as to the idea that they would cut him to save, what is it, 1.1 mil? I think right now and I know it's just over $1 million. It's not much over $1 million, but the savings are next to negligible, and it's not like you're going to restructure him after already restructuring him to make room for to make things like Bud Dupree possible last year while adding players. I don't think there's any movement on Julio Jones not being with the football team next year.
Well, I think the number for him would be the post-June 1st cut, where it spreads the cap hit over a couple of years. That would be when they would move him, or if it came out that he was being cut, the move would be made after then. So let me ask you this. There was some quarterback talk, and Pro Football Talk wrote an article, the Titans are looking for the quarterback of the future. Did you feel that way based on what you heard?
No, and I read Teron and I, Teron Davenport at ESPN, we're getting ready to do a podcast right after I wrap up here because I just haven't grown tired of the sound of my own voice apparently yet. And Teron wrote that article for ESPN off John's podium availability. And I read the quote, and it didn't, Teron doesn't write his own headlines, and that's common at most places. So
sure.
I don't fault him specifically for that, but when I read the quote and when I asked John, is quarterback on the table to draft this year, it was basically the same answer. The answer started out about Logan Woodside and his improvement, and then pivoted to but we're always looking to continue to look for good football players. Again, I'm paraphrasing largely, but it was nothing specific to Tannehill and quarterback of the future. I thought that one was twisted a bit out of proportion.
I think it's interesting, too. We're talking a lot about wide receivers. And if you let's just say you're looking at this draft from a game theory perspective for John Robinson, right? And game theory would suggest, like, let's say we were talking about baseball. If you have fallen behind in drafting hitters, well, you don't then draft another hitter. You press your advantage elsewhere, where it might be pitching, right? So John Robinson has the opportunity to figure out what is going to make the most impact versus the rest of the league for the Titans. When I look at it, where were the Titans worse than the median average of the rest of the league? It's probably tight end. I mean, how much tight end talk was there this week in Indianapolis? And I mean, the other tricky thing is, where do you draft a tight end? So rarely do they come in and make massive impacts as a rookie. But maybe it's a long-term play for the Titans, and one that over 3-4 years makes even more of a difference than drafting a wide receiver right now, where 2-3 guys that are a wide receiver turn over on the roster every year.
Yeah, tight ends aren't a first-round pick. I mean, particularly not this year. Like, there's none of them that are crazy. There's no Kyle Pitts, right? There's very rarely a Kyle Pitts where it's just this fire-breathing dragon of a tight end that you can select with a top 5 pick. It's very that's the anomaly as opposed to the precedent. You can get a couple of different guys in rounds, probably 2 through 5, who can do things that help your football team in ways that you absolutely have to. You may end up drafting 2 of these guys because of the fact that all 3 who were major contributors, be it Ferkser, Pruitt, or Swain, they're all unrestricted free agents. And even if you bring back one, you still have to do something to fill out the rest of that group because of how much tight ends and specifically tight end blocking is important to your system. So, yeah, there's plenty of discussion, but first-round pick, not at that position, really not across the prospects that are here. I think offensive line, nobody's going to get fired up about a guard in the first round, but so help me God, if Zion Johnson out of Boston College is there at 26th overall and they don't take them, the Titans fans should riot.
Yeah, I saw some of one of his interviews. He has just captivated people there, it seems like.
Well, he's a great football player. Interview. I mean, he could grunt and drool and not be able to form sentences for all I care based on his tape. Like, woof, that guy is special. He's a converted. I mean, he played guard. They were working him at the Senior Bowl when I was down there on Mobile at center because versatility matters, particularly that when you have only so many offensive linemen at your disposal. And prior to his conversion to guard at Boston College, he played tackle, so he understands how to block in space on an island like that against, edge rushers in a fairly talented conference like the ACC. So, it's a bonus that he interviews well and that he was a team captain and that everybody seems to have nothing but positive things to say about him. But the film, Cosell and I were talking about this earlier, the film is the film, and the film is chef's kiss.
Yeah. Somebody always leaves there and it seems like their stock goes down. Who's the person that maybe there was the buzz on that maybe he was going in the opposite direction of good?
There hasn't been an outright disaster that I'm aware of. Lucas and I were talking about this earlier on air, like Ja'Kai Polite. I don't know if what you guys have planned the rest of the day, but Lucas, I don't know if you want to read them the Ja'Kai Polite stuff the next segment after I'm done here. But it's just, it was a nightmare scenario in 2019. Malik Willis, who has been overwhelmingly positive. I talked to a couple people the first day that I was here, I think that was Tuesday, that didn't like the way that he interviewed. And then all I saw after the fact was how well he interviewed and how much people were impressed with him last night in the drill. So I think the thing that people are most cautious about, because there's not been a guy who's depreciably stock-downed himself, but Malik Willis and his limitations from the college system that he was running, where there are precious few NFL concepts, and just the ability to diagnose defenses and to do the things that an NFL quarterback is going to be asked to do, that does put him at a disadvantage. But there's guys like that every year because there's precious few college football teams who run truly pro-style systems. It just happens to be that there's not a lot of quarterbacks this year, and so that's one of the top guys based off of just potential.
Buck Reising hanging out with us. All right. One more for me. I wanted to ask you because, by the way, if you want to consume any of these shows via podcast, Buck was able to get John Robinson on before he actually spoke to the media. So Robinson spoke to the local media. He spoke to all of the Combine media, and he spoke to Buck. All the Dylan Radin stuff that came out, basically Vrabel saying about him, no, he couldn't start today, but it's our job to get him ready. Did that feel like to you like, okay, Dylan Radin is going to be starting somewhere on the offensive line when fall camp starts, or that's the plan?
Well, sure, it's the plan. They don't have a choice. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got business decisions to make up front this year, and Ben Jones seems like almost a given that he's going to come back, but I don't know that to be so right now. So you're talking about a second round pick who, by all accounts, is athletically gifted, but they haven't been able to do their jobs in the way that Vrabel's saying that they have to get him ready to play in the NFL through 1 year. So you're hoping, I guess, that after you get through the rigors of a rookie year, because it can be a lot for these guys when you're dropped, especially from a place like North Dakota State. It's just a completely different world, a completely different level of athlete and coaching. It really is a lot easier on these dudes in year two to kind of get in a groove and figure out where they can excel and what they need to work on the most. So he damn well better be starting by the time that September gets here, because if not, that would have been another high round draft pick at the tackle position that has given you precious little contributions in his rookie season.
Is he a guard or a tackle?
I think he's a guard.
I think he's a guard.
But he's got most of his experience at tackle. Cosell, who understands this stuff at a much deeper level than I do, seems to think that he was a guard. Greg thought he could play center, honestly.
I remember
when he was coming
that.
out of the draft process last year. So I think he's a guard, but, nobody else seems to know a damn thing.
Well, we count on you to know stuff, Buck. Listen, go and see TD and tell him we said, hey, get your next podcast done. You haven't spent enough hours on the air yet today, but I know what Scoreboard sent you up there, so appreciate those guys making it possible for you to give us this great information. As always, Two Rivers for putting you on this show. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Go get some rest and scout some more prospects.
There's a nap in my future.
Thanks,
All right, do the nap, Buck. Good talking to you. A very tired Buck Reising hangs up quickly. All right. I have to hear the Ja'Kai Polite story. He's in Canada now. He was actually exported from the United States. I want to hear the story.
Exported.
He's been exported.
Excommunicated.
Also, I want to hear this from Alex Apple. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the J-Rob emotional thing. You follow the Titans. You're as interested in this as anybody. So Ja'Kai Polite and J-Rob next. It's an all J segment. Man, that's a cheery KC of the Sunshine Band here, I believe.
I wish we were outside enjoying some of that sunshine.
I feel like I'm
We should
outside
broadcast it
listening to this song. Is Ja'Kai Polite outside in Canada right now? So Buck brought this up. I heard part of the show earlier. I didn't hear it. He said you guys had a discussion about him. Was he one of like the greatest combine flubs ever? Because I'll say this. Remember when that guy, everybody had that guy on their radar because of what a good pass rusher he was. Like he went into this silly season that we're in now, everybody's like, oh, Ja'Kai Polite, I got him on my pass rush draft board. And then the bottom just fell out. So you've got the story on this? He's in Canada now. He was literally exported
The
to
Toronto
Canada.
Argonauts is who he plays for now. Yeah, so he, and this was in 2019, so 3 years ago. He had an agent, right? He had an agent because he was at the combine, but it was like he had no idea how this works. So when he was asked about his interviews with teams, he was basically complaining that they just showed him all his bad plays. So he was asked about his exchange with the Packers and how the meeting went. He said, they were bashing me. This is the transcript. They what? They were bashing me. The Packers? Yeah. The reporter asked why. They were trying to figure out my character. That's their job. They're supposed to do it. I'm not being a crybaby or anything. That's their job. I just didn't know to expect it. Is there anything they asked you that threw you for a loop? No, just character questions, accountability. Then when they turn on the film, bad plays. They show you the bad plays? Yeah, they don't show you the good plays. Like nobody told him, like, hey, buddy, this is what's going to happen at the combine. Like he was blown away that they showed him bad plays and said, hey, what were you thinking here? Like they didn't just put on the tape and say, man, you were so good right here.
I vaguely remember some of this after that happened. Some of this is starting to ring a bell. And there have been guys who, like, never made it through the physicals, like got mad about something and just went home, stuff like that. And there's always the dudes who fail the whiz quiz, even though everybody in their life is telling them, don't smoke weed before you go to the combine.
Right.
If you could just not smoke weed just long enough to get through the combine, then you got a while to smoke weed after that.
Don't get caught with your gas mask on right before you draft night like Larry Tunsil.
Well, he's still going, though. He's got a good career going. I love how you call it the whiz quiz.
But that's also an indictment of Florida, which should surprise none of us, that they didn't have their guy ready. That nobody talked to him about, hey, guys, probably had 7 or 8 guys in that class that were drafted. They were decent teams.
He was still a
This is how
third-round
this
pick.
works. But to the Jets.
But
It tells you exactly why the Jets stink.
So talented, though. He still got picked in the third round.
Well, and that's not by the Rams, right?
No, by the Jets.
By the Jets.
Oh,
Then he was
Ja'Kai
on the
Polite.
Rams. Then he
Right,
was
then
on. He's been on like 5 teams.
So, and that's not all. He was asked about his best meeting. He said it was the Rams.
There's more.
He said the Rams were his best meeting. Why? Because they didn't bash me. Everybody else was picking at my game. It's a job interview. They're picking at your game because they want to know if they're going to invest millions of dollars in your game. I just was so mind-blown that, first of all, that I don't remember this in the moment. And just reading through these, and then the last one here, when he's talking to the media, he stunned the reporters there when he said he has never watched himself on film.
I mean, it's hard to fault a guy for just, I don't know, guess he thought highly of himself. Had no idea how it worked. I mean, my mother would call him a crybaby. Hey, happy birthday, right, by the way.
He was
Diana,
a third-round
happy
pick. He never made it out of training camp. As a third-round pick.
He was with the Seahawks, too, right? That's the third one.
He got waived on August 31st, 2019. He signed on September 2nd to the practice squad of Seattle. He was released September 23rd.
He did have 19 and a half sacks in the SEC.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I liked him. We all liked him.
That's cooking.
He's with the
I remember the
Toronto
name. I mean,
Argonauts,
of course,
Ja'Kai
like most
Polite.
people, hadn't thought of him in 3 years.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Have you thought about this, John Robinson's emotions at the combine? I know Buck Reising talked about it, said he was there, didn't really feel like it was the biggest of deals, but a lot of people did have a take on it. I'm curious to get what you thought when you saw that.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that the fans really liked that, right? Because
Oh my
you can
gosh.
identify with that emotion.
Yeah.
64,000 people felt that way leaving that stadium that night.
Yeah.
You love a guy to love it that much. The cynical way to look at this would be if you're going to start tearing up, you got to bring it, right? I mean, you only get kind of like one tear up opportunity, and then it's like, okay, we do something about it. You know? I mean, so you can't cry every offseason. But no, I think that was a raw, real moment. And I love real moments, right? We so rarely get that, right? Mike Vrabel comes to the podium. Half the time he's not telling you what he really thinks.
Right.
Right? You're not vulnerable. People close themselves off. I thought that was awesome. I give him a lot of credit for feeling like he could express that. Does it really matter that he was moved to tears by that? I already knew the guy cared.
Yeah.
I never questioned that.
That was day one.
Anybody that's questioning that's an idiot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's from here. Or he wants to take the team to the Super Bowl. And as much as a fan loves it, think about that's his whole world, right? I go home. I got something else going on, right? I mean, it may bother me for a couple of days. He spent years compiling that. So I liked it. Does it move the needle for the Titans? No. But it confirms something I think we already knew. God really cares. You got to have that.
Did you have a strong feeling on it either way, Lucas? I'm asking just because you guys are both younger than me. I just wondered how it hit you. And Alex is right. Fans loved it. I'm curious how it hit you.
Yeah, I was just kind of taken aback by it more than anything. Like, you don't see that.
It's just rare.
Yeah, the NFL Combine doesn't exactly elicit emotion, right? It's a pretty dry, mundane week of names and numbers being thrown around. So I was just taken aback by it more than anything. I don't know. I'm with Alex. I think it appeals to the fans. It looked like a real moment. You know, it didn't look manufactured to me. I could see somebody walking away and saying, come on, you know, like you've had weeks to reflect on that, yada, yada, yada. But that's his first time, you know, being surrounded by media questioning him about the way that ended. And I think there's plenty of Titans fans that look back and say, man, still think like what an AFC championship would have looked like here against the Kansas City Chiefs.
And I think that there is a chance that people look at guys in his position making millions of dollars and wonder, is he just, I mean, does it, if they win the Super Bowl or if they don't, does it really matter to him? He gets his paycheck. Yeah. And the answer is absolutely that it really matters to him. So, I mean, I would bet there's GMs in the NFL that are never going to be moved to tears over their team's success.
And it wasn't a normal season, right? Like it was anything but, where they had 91 players. There's consistently scouring the waiver wire to see who can come in and do a job. And they did it well enough to get the 1 seed and then ended the way it did. So a lot of up and downs, you know, I don't think it was like a manufactured deal. I was just surprised by it more than anything. You just don't see that.
Because real moments are rare. That's why I like it.
In Alex's perspective, you were a longtime TV reporter, so you spend your life looking for real moments to put on the air and to show people, to let people see real life through the lens of, you know, your camera, or in our case, through our microphone. The things that he said, because what was the original question?
Just reflecting on it, what could you have done better?
What could you have done better?
Yeah.
In 2021? And then he started to say something, and then he was quiet for like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And he started talking about trust. And to me, that was, they just gave him a contract extension. They trust me. Even though it didn't end the way we wanted it to, they trusted me. I think that probably hit him. But when he said, man, that stadium was rocking.
And then, what was the alternative for him, Mick?
And then he tried to get his breath, and he's like, and I can only think of how it would have been the next week. I'm paraphrasing a little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's like a lot of people. Like they cycled through 91 people, then they got healthy for the playoffs and pooed the bed. And I think that I think you just saw. To me, that's a guy who knows one got away.
And he's from here, right? Like
Union City.
Union City.
The alternative is for him to go, we had 91 players. I thought we really held it together quite well. I was happy with how our staff and our scouts worked to bring in these guys off the street. I'm really proud of what we did. And that would have been a fine answer. We wouldn't have talked about it at all, probably. Yeah. But for a fan to see that sort of personal reaction, I mean, it sort of connects you to the guy in a way that, you know, when you left that stadium, John Robinson wanted personally for you as a collective, 68,000 Titans fans and hundreds, thousands more watching elsewhere, wanted you to have that experience as much as he was, feeling like that was something for our team or our players or my personal success. It wasn't about him.
Yeah.
And that's a rare, real moment.
It was he kept it very real. All right, when we come back, Alex Apple has a great question. Who is the best professional, sorry, that's so exciting I can hardly say it, best professional athlete in the state of Tennessee? We got both ends of the height spectrum. We got all sports represented. We come up with 4 names. Also curious to hear from you. 615-737-1045. It's Blaine and Mickey on 1045 The Zone.
It is 2:03. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. The SEC Women's Basketball Tournament quarterfinals underway at Bridgestone Arena on Broadway. Number 1, South Carolina defeated Arkansas 76-54. Up next, Florida and Ole Miss tipping off here in just a few moments. Tonight at 8:30, the 18th-ranked Lady Vols taking on Alabama for a berth in the semifinals. The Belmont Bruins begin their OVC tournament slate in the semis today with the season on the line. Casey Alexander's squad taking on Morehead State. Tip-off is at 9:30. A lot of moving parts in the SEC men's basketball slate on Saturday. Number 13, Tennessee, hosting number 14, Arkansas. The Vols looking to stay unbeaten at home this season. A Vols win and an Auburn upset loss at home against South Carolina would give Tennessee a share of the SEC regular season title. Tip-off is at 11 a.m. Hear the Vol Network call right here on The Zone. Vanderbilt will fight to get back to 500 on Saturday. The Commodores taking on Ole Miss on the road, a 5 p.m. tip-off. College baseball, Tennessee is in Houston taking on the number 1 team in the country, the Texas Longhorns, at Minute Maid Park tonight. First pitch is at 7 p.m. The Vandy boys in Hawaii for a 4-game series. Game 1 is tonight, a 10:35 first pitch. The Nashville Predators coming off a loss to the last-place team in the Pacific, the Seattle Kraken. Next up, the second-to-last-place team in the Pacific, the San Jose Sharks, as Nashville remains on the West Coast. Preds are still 4th in the Central. Puck drop tomorrow is at 7 p.m. And Nashville Soccer Club plays its second game of the season after last weekend's win at the Seattle Sounders. NSC is at Minnesota United tomorrow for a 5 p.m. kickoff. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. What's up, everybody? Hour number 2 on this beautiful Friday. Alex Apple is sitting in for the Hitman today. Lucas Panzica is running the controls and making the show go like he always does. Great discussion on a bunch of stuff so far. Check the show out later if you missed the first hour, or even if you just want to hear it again because you enjoyed it so much. Get it where you get all your favorite podcasts, rate, review, subscribe, download it. Listen to it. You can find all your favorite Zone shows, all of them, wherever you consume your podcast that you love. NFL Combine continues today, and buzz yesterday was about how fast all of the receivers were. They were just the fastest. 9 guys ran a sub 4.4? Was it 9? Is the most ever? And the first thing, Alex Apple comes in today, sits down and says, please, no one mention 40-yard dashes to me anytime soon. Here's the thing, though. It's a made-for-TV TV show. And as Buck Reising joined us earlier and said, oh my gosh, fast guy is fast, big guy is strong, but we eat it up because these guys are the future of the NFL and we can't get enough NFL.
Yeah, so wide receiver X ran a 40 time that is about equal to the cornerback that's going to be guarding him for the next 10 years. You look at the list of the fastest guys, too, none of them are that good. I mean, there's so much more to playing receiver than straight line speed. I'm not a huge combine viewer to begin with, and so telling me who ran the fastest 40 time tells me one wide receiver name that's going to be overdrafted, probably by the Oakland Raiders because they pick the fastest guy every
and gone in 3 years,
5 years.
I did some digging on this because I was looking at the best 40 times, best broad jumps of all time leading into this combine and who sticks out. And the majority of the guys that top those lists are not in the league anymore, never really did much. But the 3-cone drill, the second best 3-cone drill ever in combine history, and y'all would know this if you were listening earlier, but is currently on the Titans. So if you weren't listening earlier when we talked about it on the Buck Reising show, who do you think that is? The second best 3-cone drill in combine history coming into 2022 currently plays for the Titans. We've had him on the show this past season.
Christian Fulton.
Buster Screen.
Buster Screen.
Yeah.
He was a good
UTC.
addition. One of the 91.
About 10 years ago.
I don't think I would let him get away. Buster Screen, second best combine 3-cone drill. But Alex Apple came in today with a question. And by the way, people in the Zone TV chat are going in every other direction on this. Best current professional athlete playing for a team in the state of Tennessee. So all due respect to Jalen Ramsey, Wilma Rudolph, Reggie White. We didn't specify because before we finished the first segment, the last segment of the first hour, I said, Alex had a great question. Best professional athlete in Tennessee. You guys are giving a bunch of answers. Now there's Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson has entered the chat. So Lucas, Alex, and I had a little text chain going. And your thing was, who's better, Derrick Henry or John Morant? Who's the better athlete? Which I thought was fantastic. So I think Lucas thrown in, let's go with Yossi for the Preds, Roman Yossi. That's fair. And so then I asked both of you, who should we put on there from Nashville SC? Which immediately, you both texted at the same time, Hani Mukhtar.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I'm saying all of that right.
You are.
Mukhtar. Okay.
Good enough.
I knew if I tried to say it with some kind of accent, I was going to destroy it. So I just tried to say the regular Americanized version of it. So between those four, because that's a fascinating thing, John Morant at his size is ridiculously explosive.
Right.
Then Derrick Henry at his size is ridiculously fast and explosive.
They're both so unique. I mean, Tennessee is blessed with two guys that are total enigmas.
Yes.
Right? To borrow a good word. John Morant, Derrick Henry. I'm of the opinion, I'm wearing his jersey today, that it's John Morant. I thought most people would say Derrick Henry. I tweeted about this. @AlexApple_ is my Twitter. A poll about an hour ago. Right now, it's exactly tied at 46% each, John Morant and Derrick Henry. Maybe there's like 2 votes for Roman Yossi. Hani Mukhtar is a good player, but he's got no votes so far. But you're talking about the best athlete. Who is the best at doing what he does and how that impacts their team? And right now, I think we are blessed. John Morant's averaging like 45 over his last 3 games. Had a quiet 38 last night against Boston. Grizzlies actually lost. Didn't play that great. But you've got a team that's way ahead of schedule, 3rd place, and you've got a guy that in Derrick Henry that has basically an entire franchise running through him in a style that you really don't see anywhere else in the NFL right now. That's why I thought it was a great question. The best athlete. We're not talking about the most popular. Best athlete right now, Derrick Henry, John Morant. I think, you can argue with this, Mickey, if you think I'm being too harsh. I think it's John Morant by a distant margin. As far as ability to dominate his sport.
Like, we've never seen Roman Yossi jump. Like, what if they had a little combine and he verted 40? Because all those hockey players' legs are like tree trunks. So we've never seen Roman Yossi jump. I mean, I've only seen him walk in person a handful of times, and he was wearing a suit, like walking into a game. So we've never seen him jump. And then Hani Mukhtar, I mean, we've never seen him break a tackle or dunk. But you can watch him run for, an hour, any given night that you want to watch them play.
That's impressive in its own right. That sort of stamina.
And people are weighing in, like Nucktropolis says, Ja is the best all-around. Henry is 1 in 1. I don't know what that,
of one.
One
maybe.
of one maybe means. Avancy says A.J. Brown could be a 2-sport athlete. I get that. But just for the sake of discussion, we did have to narrow it down.
But there's only one guy in the state that's impacting his sport in the way that he's currently doing it, and it's John Morant.
Although when Derrick Henry was healthy, he impacted his sport for 2,000 yards. Like one of 7 guys in history. When he was healthy, he was impacting the NFL that way. That's why I think, could it be Derrick Henry because he's so big and so fast? I don't even know how high he could jump. He could. We could go
probably dunk with ease.
We could go back and look at because his combine numbers would all be there, everything. So with Henry, we could know exactly what he could jump and how fast he could run because it's all there. The fact that, and I retweeted this on Blaine and Mickey from Alex Apple _ Twitter account. The fact that John Morant in a poll based in Nashville is tied with Derrick Henry in anything, that tells you
he's pulled ahead just slightly. That tells you just how good he is.
Exactly.
I mean, we are getting treated to 2 unbelievable athletes right now. And this is not a fault of Derrick Henry. But Ja plays a position and a sport, really it's different in basketball, where he impacts the game more than Derrick Henry does right now. So to me, that makes him the best professional athlete in the state right now.
Lucas, you're our international soccer correspondent. How do you roll in this poll?
Yeah, what Alex just said, I think, puts it well, that John Morant has the ability, even just the way the game of basketball is structured in the NBA compared to how the role running back plays in the NFL. I like what Alex said. As far as Hani Mukhtar goes, he's an MVP candidate, no question. There's a great argument that he probably should have won it last year. He led MLS in goals and assists, but that's more from a technicality standpoint, right? Like Hani Mukhtar can probably, outrun John Morant and Derrick Henry as far as mileage, but I don't know that he'd be faster, that he could be stronger or jump higher. But from a technicality standpoint, he's one of the best in MLS. But as far as pure athleticism, I think right now in this moment on March 4th, 2022, I think it is John Morant, even though he didn't have his best game last night in Boston.
And I'm not necessarily going just off athleticism. As a player, whatever is all-encompassing as a player to you. I mean, that includes athleticism.
All I can think now is just I would like to see Roman Yossi jump.
Yeah.
I'd want to go down and set up the board where you jump up and knock the
Call up somebody at Bridgestone.
Yes, and then they add up what that is to make your vert.
That is fascinating. Nobody ever asks that. What can hockey players get on a vertical?
There's no hockey combine, in Latvia.
Why don't we all waste a week of our life and find out what he runs in the 40 too? It matters about as much as it matters to a receiver.
Well, how fast can he skate his 40? Maybe his 3-cone skate drill.
And he may honestly be, you can't know this in a vacuum. He honestly may be the best player at his position in the sport right now, but hockey is never impacted by one guy. The best player in the world, Connor McDavid, has he made it out of the first round in a while? And he's got maybe the second best player in the world on his team, right? Hockey's just tough. And I think that takes him out of this discussion a little bit. Basketball is certainly set up to be the most driven by an individual.
One guy can make the most unbelievable difference.
Yeah. And you could argue Job missed 9 games this year. The Grizzlies went 7-2 without him.
That's the craziest stat of the whole season.
But they're a really good team. They got a really good GM.
They finally got it right from the top to the bottom. I don't know. I might have to lean with the big guy, Derrick Henry, just because he's such a freak at that size. They're both freaky for their size, but is his big freakitude more freaky than Jaw's smaller freakitude?
If Derrick Henry played a different position, which would be quarterback, would be the example that you'd want in this scenario, I think it's a different argument because his ability to impact the game then matches what an individual could do in basketball. But it's just hard as a running back. It's hard to make that direct comparison. That's why it's a good debate.
What if it was John Morant or the Ravens quarterback?
Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
I'd probably give it to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's maybe the best player in his sport right now. John Morant, is he the best player in his sport right now? Maybe. I don't think you'd say that about Derrick Henry. He's the best player at his position. And he can't help what position he plays, but that in this argument, that works against him.
Well, you can hit us on Twitter at Blaine and Mickey's own TV chat. Should be able to take maybe a call or two later, but we need to get out of here right now because we got our guy Josh Ward coming up. We'll talk a little Vols, and if you want to check in on this, I know Alan does. We'll squeeze in a couple of phone calls around Josh's appearance as well. But Josh Ward set to join us next from WNML Radio in Knoxville. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Lucas wants to give away some hockey tickets. Smashville, your chance to win Nashville Predators tickets is now. Big caller number 5. Your chance to win tickets to see the Preds take on the Ducks March 10th at Bridgestone Arena, 615-737-1045. Caller 5 will get it for you. Hockey is in full swing right here in Smashville. Don't miss out on the next home game. That is Thursday, March 10th. Preds against the Anaheim Ducks at 7 p.m. Alan and Donaldson wants to weigh in on our topic real quickly. Then we'll get to Josh Ward. Alan, having this discussion about the best current pro athlete on a Tennessee professional team, Ja, King, Roman, or Honey. What do you say?
Oh, it's the King. Come on, this isn't even an argument. You put the King. You even said you would think he could probably dunk, so he could play basketball. Give any of those other people some face masks, some helmets, some pads. Let them play safety or cornerback, and let Henry get a 20-yard run. Oh my God, he would destroy them.
Yeah, but Alex here. Let me ask you this: Derrick Henry also couldn't guard Damian Lillard, Kyrie Irving.
What?
I mean, I can dunk a
not.
basketball. That doesn't mean that I'm a good athlete.
I cannot, just for the record.
Not either, for the record.
Hey, thank you for the call, Alan. I appreciate it. I'm with him. I'm probably going to lead to King, but Jaws just absolutely crazy.
He makes a good point. But we're
Very
not asking
compelling.
if they played the other guy's sport.
That's true.
Derrick Henry also can't skate, probably.
That might be the best question of who can cross over. I know Josh Ward could probably play any sport. He joins us now via Zoom. Josh, see if you can pull an answer out for this. So Alex Apple is filling in for Blaine today. Longtime TV journalist, and he just walks in and uncorks this on us. Best current Tennessee professional athlete on a current Tennessee team, Derrick Henry, John Morant. We added Roman Yossi of the Predators and Hani Mukhtar of the Nashville SC. What say you in your infinite wisdom?
By the way, I can confirm I can play pretty much any sport. Play any sport well, that's a separate conversation.
Can you dunk?
Yeah, I cannot. I never have, and I definitely never will. So it's going to be one of the things I go to my grave regretting that I wasn't given that ability. I'm jealous of anybody who can. I factor that in, by the way. If you can dunk, then you're going to be elevated in this conversation. So the way I would view it is like if you take it as the wrestling belt, who owns the belt? I think that the holder of it right now is Derrick Henry. I would go with King Henry as the king in that conversation. But he's going to be passing that over to Ja Morant very soon. That's not a knock on Derrick Henry. We also recognize the shelf life is what it is for running backs, but Ja is spectacular. You know, it's a shame for several reasons, the injury factor with Derrick Henry this past season. But one thing we could have watched is where he would have ultimately ended up in the MVP conversation in the NFL, because he would have been somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah.
And then Ja Morant, he's in the MVP conversation in the NBA, and at such a young age, it's a statement of what he's doing. So I think it's King Henry's title, but I think it's going to be Ja soon. And when it's his title, I think he's going to hold it for quite a while.
That's true. This is a good time to have this conversation because a year from now, I mean, King Henry's probably at his ceiling, right? I mean, what else can I do? 2,500 yards? Probably not. This is the best version of Derrick Henry. Is this the best version of Ja Morant? I don't think we know that yet. And matter of fact, I would say no. Look how much he's improved in his first 2 years.
Like his jumps.
22 years old. I'm sure that it's not the best we've seen yet. I hope not.
Like his jumps, he's still going up. Let me ask you this. This Zakai Ziegler GoFundMe thing, his family had a house fire and they needed help. You know, a year ago, this would have given Tennessee the death penalty. But now, in the age of NIL, this is a good thing that can happen.
I didn't even think about that. You couldn't have done this a year ago.
You couldn't have given him a blanket.
15 years ago.
You couldn't have given him a blanket a year ago, Josh, and now you can raise, $300,000 for him in an afternoon.
Right. That was one of my thoughts, is how much easier this is to do, to find ways to help an athlete, to where the news is being given out on a Tuesday night, and by Wednesday afternoon, everything is set up and public and available. And Rick Barnes earlier today said that Jerry Stackhouse called and asked, how can I help?
Wow.
That you can do that so easily now. It should have been a no-brainer. I've been publicly supportive for years of the idea of name, image, likeness, and opportunities for athletes to be able to market themselves and all that. But in times of need, whether it's something as significant as this or little things, when we're talking about hunger issues that's popped up from time in the past, where they've made progress in the last probably 10 years or so, but we just had honestly some of the dumbest conversations that you could possibly come up with, because it was simply allowing athletes to do what everybody else is able to do. So I think it took too long, but I'm glad that it's here now. And I just think it's an incredibly positive story, what Tennessee fans did to step up and help Zakai Ziegler, what fans of other schools, representatives of other schools wanted to do, because it was a story that's bigger than sports, and was just really inspiring to see how many people wanted to do something to help Zakai's family. And then Zakai's response when the donations came in at such a high number, greater than what his family needed. And their response was, we will be passing this along to charity. And then they stopped the GoFundMe where they did. It's 7X. I mean, that's incredible. So sometimes we debate and we yell and we argue about all these things. We can all agree on this. This was a positive story this week.
Sure was. Josh Ward, our guest, WNML Radio. You can catch him there 12 to 3 weekdays. Also, he does a whole bunch of other stuff over in Knoxville for the media.
I think it's interesting, too, and this is taking a whole different look at this, right? I'm thrilled that Zakai Ziegler's family has been helped. Beyond that, though, I mean, this is probably the kind of example you point to as a recruiting coach of any sport and say, hey, you will be taken care of here, right? Zakai Ziegler came in with no NIL money. I mean, I love Tennessee basketball. I forgot he was in the class, right? I mean, but doesn't this, very few schools, this sets Tennessee apart. Very few schools probably engender this kind of support. I mean, is that too cynical to look at it like that? Like, this is also a major selling point for the university trying to get these young kids.
No, I don't think it's cynical. I think it's pretty obvious that was part of the motivation from some fans, because they knew that the needs had been met. We didn't know exactly what the number was, but the goal was 50,000. You see that it's hit so quickly, and then it keeps building, and by the evening you're at 200,000 plus, and you're still seeing. You're seeing some public figures that were giving $1,000, $2,000 even after the goal was hit. So I'm sure part of the thought was, hey, let's see how big we can make this to make a statement on how Tennessee supports its athletes. And that doesn't have to be a negative. I think it's an obvious fact that was part of it, to make a statement on what Tennessee fans were able to do. Not all donations were from Tennessee fans, but obviously the easy majority was. So, Rick Barnes, Tennessee basketball coaches, Tennessee football coaches, Tony Vitello, they will tell recruits, look at the passion of this fan base. This is the kind of support you get if you are an athlete at Tennessee. And Zakai is also he's so popular. His story is inspiring of the journey that he took to get to Tennessee. So all of that added up to make it the kind of story that it was this week. So, yeah, there were some other reasons I think people were giving, but that doesn't make it a negative to the story.
Let me put the horse way before the cart here. Hopefully this, I asked this, but the Vols go on to win the national championship, and we all celebrate and could care less because you got what you craved, a championship. But should Kennedy Chandler come back to school? I mean, he is a maybe late first-round draft pick right now. You look at that Tennessee roster. Talk about a chance to be really good. You bring that guy back next year?
Well, my immediate answer to that question is always the player should do what he wants, which is a pretty obvious response. If I were in Kennedy's position, seeing where projections are right now, if I were him, I would probably go, because he's late first, maybe early second. I think he's getting a guaranteed contract, whether he's a first or second round pick, just because of his talent, his potential, what he could be. A comparison would be either Jaden Springer, who was a late first round pick from Tennessee a year ago, and he got a ton of money in his first round contract, or Herb Jones, who was a second round pick, early second from Alabama. He got a 2-year deal, still making a ton of money playing for the New Orleans Pelicans. But if Chandler decides, you know what, I want to improve my stock. I don't like what I'm hearing right now. I want to show that I can continue to develop my game. And you can come back to Tennessee, and we do come back to NIL opportunities. He wouldn't have to come back to Tennessee for free. That used to be the conversation, at least supposed to be for free. But he can now come back and he can make money as much as he would get in an NBA contract. I don't think so. I'd be really surprised by that. But you can come back, work on your game at the collegiate level, play for a team that is likely going to win a ton of games next year, and continue to have that kind of exposure, and then see where you are in the draft next year. So I don't think Kennedy has a bad choice here. He's going to make a good amount of money next year, whether he's a professional, whether he's a college basketball player. If he goes, I totally understand. I think he arrived at Tennessee planning to be here for a year. But I think his experience at Tennessee, he's really developed, I think, as this year has gone along. He can do that again next year. If Tennessee gets him back, watch out for the preseason conversation next year.
Josh Ward on with us, WNML Radio. Who is with one game left in the regular season, who is your MVP of this team?
Of Tennessee's basketball team?
Yeah.
I would go Kennedy because I think he's so important on the offensive end, playing that point guard position. What Zakai does coming off the bench definitely helps, and those two guys on the floor are great. Vescovi, I think, deserves mention with this conversation. He's been so good. He's been so consistent all season long. And then Josiah Jordan-James, when you look at both ends of the floor, has been important, especially weighting the defensive side. But, Chandler, you can make a case with his ability to force turnovers, take the basketball away, and pester opposing guards. At times, he's the best defender for Tennessee. He's their most important playmaker, I think would be the right description on the offensive end. Think about the end of the Auburn game. Auburn miraculously has come back to cut it to 3. And there's the factor in Thompson Bowling Arena.
Yeah,
who has the
big time.
basketball to then put Auburn away? It's Kennedy Chandler. Clear out. Kennedy's going to go to work. He hits a shot. Ball's hanging on the rim for 30 seconds, probably in the minds of Tennessee fans, and it goes in.
Yeah.
It's essentially ball game. Chandler's the guy you trust to do that on the offensive end. On the defensive end, he has been terrific and so frustrating for opposing teams. So I don't think he's the obvious answer, but I would go with Kennedy Chandler as the answer.
And I asked the Kennedy Chandler question not because he's not an excellent player, but an NBA scout's going to look at him and wonder just how good he is coming off the ball screen right now, which is not the best part of his game. He's a clear-out uses athleticism guy right now. That's not to say that he won't be great at that, and he's still developing. Obviously, he's improved. Everyone does under Rick Barnes. How about the big men, though? Brandon Huntley-Hatfield and Jonas Adu, I mean, in some ways, maybe the Kamwa injury is a blessing because you've found out that you've really got something in two guys. Hopefully, they both stick around, and you've got two developmental pieces whose ceiling is as high as any big man Tennessee's had since Tyler Smith, a big man, Tobias Harris. They're different players than that. I mean, who would you compare their ceiling to?
Yeah, I mean, at the collegiate level, Grant Williams filled that role. He's on the perimeter with the Boston Celtics. But you're right with Huntley-Hatfield and Jonas Adu, who was not a part of the equation at all before the Olivier injury, and he's come on and really been a bright spot for Tennessee off the bench. And last week, what Huntley-Hatfield did is a reminder to not give up on someone in the middle of a year where he was a freshman with big he was highly acclaimed coming in, big expectations when he arrived, wasn't living up to it. Coming off the bench, then he's forced into a starting role with Olivier's injury. And the way he responded in a matchup with Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler on the floor, mentally he was ready for that game. 2 months ago, wouldn't have been, I don't think. But I think for those guys as well, before they got to Tennessee, you're playing summer basketball. You're playing against that kind of competition, Jabari Smith included. And so I think they probably looked at it and said, okay, physically, I can match up with these guys. I know that I can. Here's an opportunity. He hit that 3 when it was an 11-point game. That really mattered for the game, and I think it mattered for Huntley-Hatfield's confidence. But, to Rick Barnes, rebounding the basketball matters, playing good defense, and that was on display last week against Auburn as well. So I would go back to Olivier's injury when it happened. I thought, because I didn't have that level of confidence yet in Huntley-Hatfield stepping up. We hadn't seen Jonas Adu in any meaningful minutes. The way they have responded, if they keep it up and John Fulkerson continues to play at least a consistent role for the Vols off the bench where you can count on him for 8 to 12 points and for him to get some offensive boards for you, that raises the ceiling of what this team can do in March.
Couple of red hot teams are going to play tomorrow in Knoxville. In the morning here, 11 o'clock our time. How do you see things working out? Part 2, Vols and Razorbacks.
Yeah, I think it'll work out in Tennessee's favor. The Vols are at home where they haven't lost this season. Thompson Bowling is going to be awesome. They're going to check her TBA. Bold prediction: when Zakai steps onto the court and is introduced, there will be an ovation for him. And I just think Tennessee will play well. And how could they shoot worse than they did at Arkansas a couple of weeks ago? That was a dreadful game, dreadful shooting performance, terrible to watch. I think tomorrow's game will be better than that. Still probably defensive-minded, but I think Tennessee will be better offensively, probably not as many charge calls going Arkansas's way. If so, then I'm getting out of the way as the fans are going to come down toward the officials. So watch out for that. But Tennessee's been so good at home. The defense on the perimeter, I think, will cause Arkansas some problems. They're not a great outside shooting team in the first place, and I wouldn't expect them to shoot well. So I think Tennessee closes out the regular season unbeaten. Now, take Arkansas seriously. I don't think fans are not doing that, but this is a team, they went to Florida and won. They went to LSU and won. So they've gone away from home and won some important basketball games. This is going to be their biggest win if they can get it away from home in a road environment. But I don't think Arkansas will. I think Tennessee wins.
Josh Ward from the Sports Animal on the way out. The ceiling for this Tennessee basketball team is?
I think it's a high ceiling. I mean, I think it's a team that can go to the Final Four. Now, that's not my prediction, but I say that because Tennessee's in a good position to get at least a 3 seed, maybe a 2. They probably need some help there and some work to be done in the SEC tournament. But let's say a 3 seed. That's definitely on the table for Tennessee. Well, that puts them in a favorable spot to get to weekend number 2, right? To get to the Sweet 16. And then let's see how you perform. Tennessee let's say it's a 3 versus 2 matchup, or the other way, if it's a 2 versus 3 in Tennessee's favor. The Vols match up fine and can defend. How are they going to shoot? But we'll probably ask that about their next opponent. And then if you win that game, which you'd have 3 or 4 days to get ready for to try to do, you've got one shot at it. Go play your game in the Elite Eight. So getting the Final Four is difficult for anybody, but I think you ask about the ceiling. I think Tennessee can get there. And then obviously at that point, see how it plays out. But I think Tennessee has a really good chance because of the way it's played over the last few weeks and the key wins against Kentucky and Auburn and Arizona earlier in the season. And you hope tomorrow, if it plays out that way, Tennessee's in a really good position to play its way to the second weekend and then take your shot if you get there.
Josh, great stuff, man. We know you're busy, and we always appreciate you catching up with us at Josh_Ward, or, of course, on the Sports Animal 12 to 3. Thank you, sir. Always good to hear from you.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir. The one and only Josh Ward. When we come back, it's the one and only Call Your Shot. It's coming up next. You got a shot? Hit us on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline, 615-737-1045. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. We spent the entire break eating chicken wings. Little Blue Menu, just literally. I heard Ron Slay yelling.
That's how you do it. Well, you knew.
We're in a soundproof room. That's the truth. This is a soundproof room that we're in. I could hear Ron Slay yelling in the hallway. I knew something food-related had to have happened, and literally there's a room full of wings from Little Blue Menu.
As he said, the wings are smaller from Little Blue Menu because they use the Chick-fil-A bird, so he likes them baby chicken.
Little baby chicken wings.
Okay, you guys are going to get peed on the phone here to us. Let's just enjoy our chicken and keep it moving. It's very delicious. Thank you.
It is good.
You were saying this in my ear. We had Josh Ward on. Tennessee plays Texas in baseball today, and Alex and I were talking about this, and he was talking about them playing Texas. I said, I think it's some weird deal where they play 3 Texas teams in 3 days, right? It's like a challenge. Everybody in Texas is playing the Vols.
Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma.
Baylor and Oklahoma, yeah. So 2 Texas teams in Oklahoma. The Invitational also has UCLA and LSU. I mean, it's like a who's who of college baseball down at Minute Maid Park in Houston.
Oh, it's the trip to Houston.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's in
that makes
Houston.
sense. Oh, see, I missed that little factoid.
It's on MLB Network this weekend because
They're scrambling for programming.
Yeah, my Horned Frogs have played in it a couple times. I've watched it before. But it always is, they collect the best teams. I'll give them that.
For the people who like college baseball, it's about to be a magical time for you because Major League Baseball is like all other sports. As much as you may love it for all the reasons that you love it,
Oh, my gosh.
TV people love it because it's TV programs that fill thousands of hours every year. They're going to be scrambling. So like MLB Network can only show the edited version of Bull Durham so many times to fill time. They have to show other things.
Mark DeRosa can only do so much babbling. But,
so that's going to be big things. If you're a college baseball fan, enjoy it because you're about to get all of it you can handle.
There was a point, and Buck had a discussion. You guys had a good guest on, Lucas, about Major League Baseball, former sports executive, who was talking about it. But the one point that wasn't made in that
David
that I
Sampson,
think bears a lot of discussion is, and I don't recall the date right off my top of my head. I think it's like April 25th. They can delay games until then, roughly 20-some-odd games, and not have to reimburse the TV contracts at all. So the owners do have the long-term thought of, hey, what's 15, 30 games right now? I'm going to own this team for 30 years. It's not going to make that much difference to me. But once you start having to contend with clauses in your TV contracts where you're giving back money, I mean, you're now not only losing gate revenue, you're starting to mess with some of the people that you really need to keep happy because that's where you make most of your money. Now, most of the baseball money comes from the playoffs anyway. But about April 25th is kind of a cutoff that I'd look for.
And as I saw Alan Bell had retweeted a baseball writer, the Major League Baseball players already had by far the worst deal. The owners have the best deal. Even if they gave them everything they wanted, they'd still have the best labor deal.
Absolutely. And the owners just are not going to the players are not going to get the salary cap, which is what they needed to have negotiated 30 years ago. And now the owners know it.
And they knew this was coming for a long time and did nothing about it. We've known that Call Your Shot's been coming for a long time because we do it at the same time every week. It's brought to you by Chattanooga Whiskey, available at your favorite Nashville retail store. Drink Chattanooga Whiskey. Enjoy responsibly. This is the time of the week where we always call our shot. Typically, we let Lucas Panzika go first. Lucas, shot-wise, what are things looking like for you today?
I'm keeping it local today. The Belmont Bruins tip off at 9:30 against Morehead State, OVC semifinals. Love mid-major basketball tournament time because everybody has one thing on the line. The winner of the conference tournament goes to the NCAA tournament. Now, OVC might actually have 2 bids if Belmont were to go on and win and beat Murray State in the championship. My shot is that Belmont wins what will be a battle tonight against Morehead State and then upsets Murray State Saturday in the OVC championship after getting blown off the floor at Murray State a little over a week ago for their second regular season meeting. That's my shot. Belmont goes on to win the OVC this weekend, and the OVC gets 2 teams into the NCAA tournament.
Which is basically like saying, I went out in the yard and found a 5-leaf clover. It's almost I'm serious. I mean,
Murray State,
I worked at a 1-bid league school.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, this is a league with Austin Peay and Tennessee Tech who had really, had sub 500 seasons that could potentially have 2 teams in. That's crazy, but I think it happens.
That's a big call right there.
Morehead State's good, too.
Yes.
Morehead
It was scrappy. Last time they played was a 44-41 type of win with Belmont hitting the game winner with less than 5 seconds left here at home.
Alex Apple, what say you? By the way, let me just say this, what Lucas is talking about, all these one-bid league tournaments. If you want the best real-life drama in the world, watch that because nobody's getting in unless they win the tournament. Nobody. Now, you're mentioning the OVC may get 2, and that's literally like finding a 5-leaf clover. It happens so they're going to take the number 13 team in the ACC instead of the number 2 team. And it's just what they do. It's just that's what's just happening. We're going to take 8 from the SEC and 1 – that's just what they're going to do.
Yeah.
The name teams.
You're playing for your life.
You're playing for your life. And to be at those tournaments and to watch how people react when they don't win, because I've been in some of those locker rooms, man, it's brutal.
You're playing for a lot of those guys are not going to play in the pros, and you're playing for the dream of the culmination of your entire sports career to make one NCAA tournament at Morehead State.
That's it, the dance. Yeah.
I'm going to be watching. I love college basketball. I'm so excited for this time of the year. Duke, North Carolina, Coach K's final home game, a true legend. They're going to play his last home game at a special arena. I'm sure that will be a sight to see. I think they're going to beat North Carolina. That's hardly calling a shot. North Carolina unranked. Duke at number 4. But I'm going to put Duke as the ACC conference champion, the tournament champion as well. And I think there's been a lot of movement in the top 10. Auburn, Gonzaga and Baylor, and a lot of those teams, shown a little bit of a vulnerability sliding into that. A Duke team that's playing really well, and they probably have the best player. When you have the best player, you got a chance. That would be a magical way for Coach K to go out. But I'm going to call him to win ACC conference tournament as well.
I picked Arkansas to beat Tennessee. I picked Tennessee to beat Arkansas at Arkansas. And they literally laid a giant pterodactyl egg. They will not do that at home. They'll overcome the emotions of Fulke's 5th senior day, and they will find a way to win that game.
And after the game, Fulkerson announced he's coming back. He'll be back for a 7th year next year.
Find a way.
Yes, teammate of Ernie and Bernie. It's time for us to get out of here. Have a great rest of the day. 3HL coming up next. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some March Madness, and we'll see you on Monday, peeps. Thanks,
Peace.
Alex. Peace.